Today on TimesCast, the European Union and the IMF discuss steps to shore up Ireland's struggling finances. Cable news stars defend their journalistic integrity.
And Mr. Koppel failed.
He couldn't give me examples of me lying on the air, using an opinion not based on facts.
Whatever that television news was before, we now have to fix it.
And a first look at another installment of the Times series, A Year at War.
Graham, the eyes of the financial world this morning are on Ireland, of all places, a small country on the fringes of Europe, where European officials and even IMF officials are going through the books wondering, can Ireland fix its problems on its own, or will it need some help?
We think a deal is likely over the next few days, just as the European Union stepped in to help Greece earlier this year. Now they're probably going to do the same with Ireland, probably about 80 billion or 100 billion, maybe to help the government, maybe to help the banking sector. Importantly, the British government is now looking at contributing in ways they've never done before. They've stayed aloof because they're not in the Eurozone.
Now this is affecting markets around the world, even in the United States. I mean, what's going on? It's only Ireland.
It's actually a lot of money at stake here. Ireland has big problems, and it affects how Europe works politically and its own economic growth.
What's the strategy here? I mean, we've gone from Greece, now we're in Ireland. I mean, what is Europe trying to do?
If you step back, there are other problems, and the markets really fear that this contagion could spread to Portugal and even Spain, which is 12% of European output. It's a big deal. So they're trying to put a firebreak in here, a really credible firebreak that stops the problem spreading and becomes a far worse problem.
In Sunday's Washington Post, newsman Ted Koppel questioned the journalistic integrity of cable news. It wasn't long before MSNBC's Keith Olbermann shot back.
Brian, it seems like every week we're back at this table one way or another talking about opinion versus objectivity, journalism. This week feels quite a bit different, though.
It does. It all starts with Olbermann, Keith Olbermann at MSNBC, making a donation to 3 Democrats, getting suspended for a couple of days.
Huge debate.
Huge debate erupted out of that. And Ted Koppel, one of the deans of journalism on television, weighs in and says, what Fox and MSNBC are doing is bad for the republic. The idea of news you can choose is bad for the country.
A lot of people agreed with Mr. Koppel, thinking we were drowning in opinions, a little short on facts. Seemed like he carried the day. But then Keith Olbermann came swinging out of the trees. Big, long, 12-minute piece.
When Walter Cronkite died 16 months ago, he was rightly lionized for the quality of his work and the impact he effected on television news.
And he really reframed history, talking about Edward R. Murrow, Walter Cronkite, and indeed Ted Koppel himself, in the ways that those men, using their reporting experience, then came on the air and expressed analysis and point of view.
And therein lies the final irony to what Mr. Koppel wrote yesterday. We got here organically, in large part because of Mr. Koppel.
And his take was, and it's really a good one, is that storied American journalists at important inflection points in American history have stepped up, turned toward the camera, and said what they really thought.
Olbermann then took the Iraq War and said this was an example of objective journalism failing, that there should have been more point of view journalism in the run-up to the war, and he was basically saying, TV news as we know it's broken and I'm trying to fix it.
The journalism failed, and those who practiced it failed, and Mr. Koppel failed. I don't know that I'm doing it exactly right here. I'm trying.
Of course, he's going to be the antidote, and more power to him. The problem, of course, is that Mr. Olbermann never leaves the studio, never leaves the click lights. Almost every single night, he turns toward the camera and says exactly what he thinks. It has a lot less impact when it happens 5 nights a week.
And a first look now at another installment of the series A Year at War.
When the firefights happen, I get a smile because it's actually fun.
It's a younger generation. They were really excited about it, and they were basically like reveling in it. I was scared.
Starting in March, Damon Winter and I have been following the 1st Battalion, 87th Infantry Regiment of the 10th Mountain Division, which is on a 1-year deployment to Kunduz Province in northern Afghanistan. We traveled with part of the battalion when it flew from Fort Drum to Kunduz back in March. We returned in September and into October to see how they're doing at their midpoint and interview a bunch of the soldiers who we had met back at Fort Drum.
I've seen some guys lose the desire and lose the will to get out and put themselves in harm's way after seeing one of their buddies go down. But I've also seen some people become more willing to go out there and be in the front.
We essentially just lived with the soldiers. We slept with them, we ate with them. When they went on foot patrols, we went out with them.
Let's go!
Our plan is to go back sometime early next year to follow the battalion in its final patrols and as it's packing up, and then fly back with them to Fort Drum to see them return home.
Join us again tomorrow for TimesCast.